So Crystal Conning is new to the Oaklawn scene this year. She kind of practiced her broadcasting hat. Women always, or anybody in horse racing, you kind of have to be a Jack or a Jill of all trades. You don't ever have just one job. So Crystal is a classic example of that. Crystal, tell us about growing up way across the globe and what your specific introduction to racing was.
Well, I was very fortunate to be born into a horse-loving family.
She speaks much softer than I do. I probably don't need a microphone because my voice projects, or so my husband tells me.
Is that better? Still can't hear me? Still can't hear me? Oh, okay. So I was very fortunately born into a horse-loving family. Both my grandfathers were racehorse trainers in New Zealand. My family's from New Zealand, but my mom and dad immigrated to Australia in their 20s. So, you know, it was kind of bred into me. I grew up riding show horses, jumping horses, etc. Always loved racing, but was kept away from the racetrack till my early 20s. I didn't get to the track till I was about 23, I think. And then it was all over. I was hooked and sold all my show horses and everything like that. But yeah, definitely they tried to keep me in the equestrian world, but I just got the bug for racing as soon as I got to the racetrack.
And that's something kind of common because Crystal's horse racing is very generational. You see a lot of different generations go into this specific sport. I'm third generation. I was actually deterred from doing it. But what do you do when one of your parents says, don't do it? You run towards it. So, yeah, it actually paid off, thank goodness. I do want to welcome jockey Kelsey Haar. She is an Arkansas native. Welcome. And if you follow the meeting here at Oaklawn, you do know that Kelsey did have an injury not that long ago out of the starting gate, but yesterday was her first day back, so we definitely welcome her back to the riding colony. Kelsey, we did ask Crystal what her introduction to racing was. She comes from a horse racing background, but you came from a different equine world. What was that?
I did. Hello, everyone. I'm glad to be here and glad to be back racing. I started out in the rodeo world a little bit. My dad was a bull rider, my brother was a bull rider, and I grew up running barrels and poles and trying to rope a little bit. And my pony was my best friend. I rode him every day. And then once I got through high school and started coming to the racetrack and realizing that this world was even here, I fell in love, and I've been here ever since. So.
And a lot of times because horse racing is 7 days a week. It's sun up to sundown. You work weekends. You work holidays. A lot of times we find our life partners in the industry as well. And that is actually the situation with Kelsey. And now has a beautiful daughter who is also equine obsessed.
She is. Her name's Lacey Jo. I just got off the phone with her. She's out at the farm actually with her other grandma, and she's trying to worm her ponies. So she was having Mom walk her step by step through the process over the phone. So she's eat up with the horses. That's all she wants to do, and I'm okay with that because all her other friends are kind of starting to like boys, and I'm not ready for that yet. So she can stick with the ponies, but she's running barrels now and loves it. And she's actually riding a thoroughbred that we used to train and ran on the racetrack for 7 years. And he never was able to win a race. He ran a lot of seconds and thirds and never could break his maiden, and he actually won his first little barrel race a couple weekends ago. So she said she's going to frame that ribbon. It's the first thing he ever won. She's a good kid, and I met my fiance on the racetrack 13 years ago, and my whole life is here.
So it's certainly a lot easier for women to get involved in racing than it was just even a few decades ago. And I think it was maybe the late 60s where women were finally allowed on the backside at racetracks. They did have to be off the grounds by dark because it wasn't safe for them to be back there. But obviously it is now a little easier, a little more accepting. Ladies, what advice would you give to a young woman who does want to get involved in horse racing? Because it looks glamorous from the outside, but it is a lot of hard work. It's dedication, and you do have to have a true passion for the sport. And I know your daughter definitely wants to be following her parents' footsteps. What advice would you give to Lacey Jo or another young woman?
Get some thick skin. That's what I always say. I was told that when I started this gig, and every day it has to get thicker. There's a lot of obstacles to go across, and but we're very fortunate. We're lucky that we're allowed to ride now, and it's not as big of a deal, and it's becoming more common to see numbers in the girls' room. It used to be 1 or 2 girls, and now we're up to 7 or 8 at a time, and that's awesome. So to my girl, she does want to ride someday, I think, but she's still into the barrel racing and all that. So I'm not pushing her towards being a jockey. I would always be behind her if she wanted to be one, but it's rough. It's strenuous all day, every day, 7 days a week. You don't get many vacations. Even when you break down and you're hurt, you got to try to get back as quick as you can because the bills still come, and that's how we make our money. So there's not much benefits or paid vacations or any of that good stuff that you get from other real jobs out in the real world. But if you love horses and you love your job, it's not hard to get up and go to work every day.
So, Kelsey, you mentioned obstacles. Obviously, that's going to happen in any industry or profession you go into. But you specifically, what was maybe one that you did have to overcome?
I think just realizing that not to take everything so personal. In this industry, I mean, you got to think about even the guys that ride in the Kentucky Derby. They've prepped these mounts, they've rode them and worked them, and they think they're going to get to ride, and maybe the horse makes it all the way to the Derby, and the week before the Derby they get switched for a different jockey or better jockey in someone else's eyes, and that's hard to go home and sleep with at night, especially when you feel like you've put in all the work and you feel like you're owed something, when you have to realize on the racetrack we're not owed anything. There's a quote that says something about success is not leased, it's rented, and rent is due every day. And I just try to remember that and realize that I'm not owed anything in this game. I'm lucky to be here, and like I said, there's obstacles as far as just getting your face out there, getting somebody to realize that you're trying. Maybe I ride a lot of long shots, I ride a lot of horses that might not look like they do good on paper or whatever, but I'm giving them my best, and I'm doing the best I can, and it's just trying to find somebody that can support you through that and realize that you're not going to win every race and you're going to make bad decisions out there, and somebody that just stays in your corner and keeps giving you the opportunity, and that's what we all want, and that's what we all really need. So
I think I'm going to make that a bumper sticker, what you just said. So, Crystal, what about you? What advice, because especially both of you being in the room, you have the opportunity to mentor younger women that do come into the industry. What advice would you give someone who does want to make this a profession? Because it's not easy.
No, it's not. I think Kelsey's really hit it on the head. You got to be tough, physically and mentally, but you just got to work. Someone said to me once that as a female rider, you're going to work twice as hard for half the opportunity, and I do think that that's true. I try not to buy into too much that, we're girls, they don't give us a shot, but you do have to really show up that little bit extra, I think. But I think if you work hard and you get good at your craft, you get your opportunities, you get your chances, there's girl riders, making it. If you work hard, you get your chance. So be tough, work hard, and just like Kelsey said, you can't take nothing too personally in this game, because it's not a girl thing. It's a jockey thing. Yep. I remember in Australia, one of our absolute leading riders, he'd won multiple Grade 1 stakes for this one particular trainer, and she took him off right before the Melbourne Cup for a bad ride on a different horse, and the horse won, and that was one of the most decorated riders in Australia. So wow. It's not a girl thing. It's not really even anything personal. It's owners and trainers doing what they think's best, and you've just got to let it slide off, and you got to ride the next day. Show up the next day at 5:30 and keep at it.
Well, that is one thing that female jockeys and trainers, and we all compete at the same level and for the same money, which is a good thing, because there's a lot of professional women athletes that don't get to compete for the same amount of money. So that is one good thing that we get to do. Kelsey has ridden, took out her license approximately 5 years ago, has made 130 trips to the winner's circle and amassed more than $5.4 million in earnings for her mounts. So she is certainly a fan favorite here at Oaklawn Park, and also when she does go up to Canterbury, which is in Shakopee, Minnesota, the remainder of the year. Kelsey, throughout your career so far, I know that she did win on her very first mount, who was a phenomenal horse. He was like basically a member of your family. What is, and you don't have to pick the top one, what's a highlight in your career so far?
Highlights would have to be the first win I rode. Was on a horse named Bandit Point. Like she said, ended up being part of my family. It'd be hard for me not to choke up talking about him, but he pretty much made me into who I was. He gave me plenty of opportunities and put me in all the big races and let me shine. So we lost him last year, and it's been hard not having him around, but I won my first race on him that I ever rode, Canterbury Park. It was Father's Day. My dad had drove up to see it and surprised me to be there. My mom was there, my nephew, my whole family, my little girl. And I rode that race with no intentions of winning. I was just happy to be out there to ride my first race. And we actually won. He was 11-1, so he wasn't a favorite on the board, but he had a shot. And we knew he would keep me safe. We knew he was the one to give me my first mount. So we rode and we won. And man, it's still like a storybook story. So that one has to be a highlight. And then I won a stake up there in Minnesota. It wasn't a big stake. It wasn't like a $100,000 purse or anything. It was a $50,000 stake up there on a filly named Best Kept Secret. And her owners were great. There were a couple people named Tracy and Kent Hirschman from Kentucky, and that was another just highlight of my career there, was winning that stake for those amazing people.
I used to love watch Bandit Point come from the clouds, and then here comes Kelsey threading the needle to get up at the finish line. Crystal, you've had a lot of amazing years. Crystal took out her license roughly 5 years ago as well. 70 wins and $1.2 million in earnings. I love when I say that to trainers. They're like, "Where did it all go?" So you've had a lot of experience riding it at different parts of the country, and you always have to say, "Have tack, will travel." So what has been one of your highlights of your career so far?
Sort of what Kelsey touched on, that first winner is always very special. I rode my first winner in Australia on a mare called Abilac. My fifth mount, I think it was,
Wow.
at Bathurst. Really cool mare. I'd been galloping her in the mornings and got on her a lot. So that was obviously, someone said to me that day, nothing will feel as good as this one. And I would agree with that. Maybe,
I'd agree too.
right? Nothing. That feeling of winning your first race is very cool. But I was fortunate enough. I rode my bug year in Kentucky. Was fortunate enough to win a couple of races at Churchill Downs. Rode a graded stake at Churchill. So those are highlights for sure. To get a couple of win pictures under the Twin Spires. That's very special.
So Crystal has this meet, luckily for me, traded in her whip for a microphone. So she did get to hone her skills as an analyst this past summer at Monmouth Park, located in New Jersey. What kind of led to the transfer of trades, so to speak?
Yeah, I never in a million years, even 12 months ago, would have pictured that this was what I was doing.
She's so good at it.
And lucky for me, so...
I was out riding in Arizona, and I wasn't having the best time out there. Wasn't really enjoying it. Sort of losing the drive a little bit out there, and
which can happen.
yeah, for sure. And a good girlfriend of mine sent me the job ad on TDN, I believe it was, for the analyst position at Monmouth, and said, "Hey, I think you'd be good at this." And I was like, "Oh, okay." So I was 31 years old and I'd never written a resume before. So I had to put that together and sent that in, and somehow got the job, which I couldn't believe. So hung up the boots, haven't ridden full-time since April last year. But yeah, went out to Monmouth and tried my hand at it and didn't mind it. So yeah, then the job here popped up, and I was fortunate enough I guess the resume I wrote was all right. And and ended up here. So yeah, it's about, honestly, a year ago, if you'd have said, "Oh, you're going to be at Oaklawn Park working with Nancy," I would have been like, "What?"
So do you still, I mean, obviously if we're involved in this sport, we're a fan first. We absolutely love thoroughbreds. We love horses. We want to see them excel. We want to excel and make them look good. Do you ever watch the races and maybe critique, or you have a desire to get back in the saddle?
Oh yeah, big time. Every afternoon when I'm in the paddock, and I'm like, throw me up on that one. Come on, let's go. But yeah, look, I do plan to ride a little bit this summer. Monmouth, we just race on the weekends, and there's a lot of tracks on the East Coast there within a couple of hours that race our dark days. So planning to do the analyst stuff on the weekends and hopefully ride a few during the week. So not expecting it to be crazy busy or anything, but I'll be happy if I can get on a couple a week, and would love to win a race or two this summer again. That'd be great.
I know anything in horse racing, you know, so it can be a very difficult life, and a lot of people do try to go have a different profession, maybe out of horse racing. But in my opinion, horse racing is like a vacuum. It will suck you back in quicker than you left. So very, very fortunate to have these two amazing women. Crystal, one of my new work wives, my old work wife is back there, Jennifer. So yeah, you develop really good relationships. And even though you're competing against each other, there is that sisterhood, especially in the girls' jocks room.
Yeah, absolutely. I rode with Kels a lot in Minnesota in the summers. The two summers I went up there, and you get really close. And yeah, we're always rooting for each other. We'd be rooting for each other in races sometimes. I can think of a couple of occasions where we'd be out the back of a two-turn race having a little laugh with each other, going, oh my goodness, what are we doing back here? But yeah, no, it's this really fun relationship. It's fun to have girls that support, you know, women supporting women is such a huge thing to me, and I'm really grateful for the friendships that I've made riding, especially with Kels. We're still really close, and I'm rooting for her every day out here, watching her ride. I love it. It's like it's like watching my sister. You know, every race I'm watching her and I'm rooting for her. So yeah, it's really special, the relationships that you can build in this sport, and different aspects of it, not just riding, but all parts of it.
Well, you both are very, very easy to cheer for. I'm a big cheerleader of both of these women. So I'm going to let them go real quickly. And I'm going to, yes, ma'am. So she asked, what do you say to people that say you're a girl, you don't have the strength to ride these thoroughbreds?
I would just say if you've been on enough horses, then you realize that it's not a strength battle anyways. You can put the biggest, strongest guy out there on a tough horse, and if he tries to manhandle that horse is going to get away from him and run off. And there's a lot more finesse that goes into riding race horses than just overpowering them. You're not going to overpower a 1,000-pound animal or 1,500-pound animal. You're going to you better learn to work with him and make friends. That's what I try to do. So that's my knowledge, or my thinking on it is it doesn't matter how strong you are, it's how good of a rider you are.
Yeah, my mentor in Australia said to me, you win races from the gate to the quarter pole. You don't necessarily win them in that last 16th. So I think what Kelsey said, it's about finesse and timing, getting along with the horse. You know, I've rode a lot of like hot fillies that don't suit the boys. They don't want you to hit them hard. They don't want you to jerk them around. They want a girl to whisper in their ear and say, come on, girl.
You're so pretty. Run for me.
Literally. That's what they're like. So, you know, for the most part, you're going to win the races, you know, won by how you've rode the race before you even get turned for home. So,
there's a lot that goes into the race prior to just riding them, like she said, from the quarter pole home and being strong in that finish. There's a lot of stuff that goes on over there on the backside to get to there. You have to have your horse in contention turning for home usually, unless you have a bandit point that comes from the clouds that can circle the field. A lot of times you got to have your horse in contention turning for home, and there's things that have to be done to get to that point, and decisions, split-second decisions that have to be made, and so it's not all about strength.
Yeah, both of these ladies hit the nail on the head, and the immediate word that came to my mind was finesse. It's all about the style because basically you are a passenger, but you have to be a smart passenger. This game is extremely mental. It is about strategy. It's about how to read the race and predict what is going to happen. So both of these ladies do it exceedingly well and can certainly stand up. And as Crystal mentioned, you might not get the same opportunities. Doesn't mean they certainly don't deserve them because they are just as good as any single man in that room.
Especially Chelsea Bailey. You don't want to take a punch from her.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Chelsea
anybody
Bailey,
that
who
says they're
isn't
tougher than a girl, let me introduce you to my friend Chelsea Bailey. I bet you'll pipe down.
Yeah, look at the guns on her. She's got better guns than anybody in the room. So without further ado, I do want to bring up my next two guests. Ladies, thank you so much for taking time.
Thank
Give them
y'all.
a big
Yeah.
round of applause, Kelsey Hart and Crystal Conning. So I'd now like to welcome up Miss Danelle Durham, trainer extraordinaire, and one of the most integral parts in any racing office I have ever been a part of, Miss Carmen Bish. I didn't want to have just jockeys or just trainers. I definitely wanted Carmen here as well because there's a lot that goes on in the mornings in racing offices. That is where trainers and jockey agents enter the horses that are going to run. It is about managing a very large staff. And with a very large staff, as you well know, that means that many different personalities. So Danelle, I do want to let you know she began training back in 2007, has 145 wins, $3.3 million in earnings. She is a prominent breeder of thoroughbreds and a mom of 4 college graduates, one who is off to law school. Carmen is a racing official, nationally accredited steward. That is a very hard process to go through and to be recognized, and works as a steward. And seriously, racing offices would not function without your expertise.
Thank you.
So I want to start with Carmen first. Carmen, what was your specific introduction to racing?
Back in Park Jefferson in South Dakota, my father trained. My mother was a horseman's bookkeeper also. And I was like you. From age of 10, I started cleaning stalls for my dad. And I was hooked. And I had my pony. I had my favorite horses. And I was just hooked. In 1981, I started training for a couple years. And then I met and married my husband, who was also a trainer. So it's been my whole life.
Manure to me smells like money, and I think you would all agree. So anytime in the paddock somebody might wrinkle their nose, I'm like, that smells like money. That's golden right there. Danelle, what was your introduction into horse racing?
Probably the common theme with all the women in horse racing. At some point, we fell in love with horses. I think my mother had me on her girlfriend's horse when I was 2, and I was competing riding show jumpers, dressage horses, and hunters probably by the time I was 9 or 10.
So we all are fans and have the passion for it before we do anything. I did ask Crystal and Kelsey this. What advice would you give a young woman? Because you're an amazing mentor to one young woman that is employed in the racing office, Jordan German. What advice would you give to a woman that does want to make racing their life?
I would make sure I would learn everything about it that I could and work hard. And it will get you to where you need to go.
So, Danelle, training is not the easiest profession. You're out there competing against maybe 11, 10 other horses every time that they do compete. If a woman came up to you and wanted to follow in your first footsteps, or one of your daughters wanted to follow in your footsteps, what advice would you give them?
Be ready to work hard. I mean, there is definitely nothing easy on the backside, and we have a little surprise. Caroline will be following us shortly.
No
Yes,
way.
after her tenure at TCU as an SID is finished in May, she wants to come and join us, join the team. Of course, she's been licensed in multiple states and different occupations before, but on a part-time basis. But I've made sure that all of my children are adequate at cleaning stalls. I mean, there's nothing, it's not a glamorous job by any chance. They've delivered foals, they've cleaned stalls, they've tacked horses, they've halter broke horses. I mean, they have done everything, all the grunt work that we all do that gets us to this point. It's not all makeup and win pictures.
No, it's not.
So
It's
be
the
ready
behind the
it's
scenes that
behind
is
the
the most
scenes. Nancy
critical.
knows. Be ready to work hard and get that shovel out in the morning.
Carmen, so far, what has been maybe a highlight in your career? Because as I mentioned, Carmen is a steward at Prairie Meadows in Iowa. The steward, in my opinion, they're judge, jury, and executioner, for lack of a better phrase. They pretty much enforce the rules. If somebody screws up, they give them the penalties. What was your desire to get into the steward stand? Because there's not a lot of women stewards, even to this day.
I just felt it was the next step in my career. I really did. I've enjoyed it, and I just want to take that step further to prove to myself more than anyone else.
So do you think, because regardless, it is a male-dominated sport, do you think that women officials, stewards, are given the same opportunities as men?
I think they do, but sometimes I think they're afraid to take that next step also. It is male-dominated.
Yeah.
It is.
Danelle, so far in your career, what has been one of your highlights? What's been one of your favorite moments?
I guess I have to look back, of course, on the bling days. Those are quite fun. I mean, winning the springboard mile, which that year was the first year that we had Kentucky Derby points. So you had to earn points to get to the Derby, which is now the rule of thumb. But what did he go off at? 127 to 1 or something, and we won the springboard mile, and we came here, and we think we were third. I got to give Mr. Lucas credit there. I know he beat me. I think I was second or third in the Smarty Jones, and then fourth maybe in the Southwest, and then we got a little over our head. But that had to be a really fun year to be on that big of a national stage, and I think that horse ended up having the points to go to the Derby, but he'd kind of run his course by the time we were finished here.
So Carmen also breeds horses. You've had horses in your backyard as well as Danelle has, literally in your backyard.
Definitely.
What is it about horses that is so communal? I mean, everybody, like I said, you're a fan of it. You're passionate about it. But this is day in and day out. We pack up and move our family when it's time to go to another meet, and we're like the fancy carnies, is what I like to say. So, was that a good lifestyle to have?
It was at the time. When my husband was still alive, it was at the time. We made it work. We worked together. We had a great marriage. It was a great time, and I wouldn't change anything.
A good team. So, a lot, as I said, we kind of marry within our own culture, and you've had a longtime partner who is also a trainer. Is there ever any criticism between you two? Like, you should have put this horse in this race, or you should have you shouldn't have ridden that rider. Do you and Joe kind of go back and forth at all?
I think that's how we continue to get along. He runs his barn and I run mine. You enter yours and I'll enter mine. And I mean, I do look up to him. I mean, he's a phenomenal horseman, and there are definitely times when I say, what would you have done differently? Or what would you do with this horse? You know, I know that with the years that separate us, he's definitely seen more than I have, and he's certainly handled more horses and won more races than I have, so he's definitely someone to look up to, and I definitely value his opinion.
What is some good advice, Carmen, that you've been given that maybe when you started out in horse racing that you still take with you to this day?
Just hard work. Just keep your nose straight to the grindstone. Look for the finish line.
What about you, Danelle? What's some good advice that maybe you even got from Joe?
Would you repeat the question?
What's some good advice that you've been given? Maybe when you started out training, when you did make that transition from the sport world to the thoroughbred world.
Gosh, I don't know that anybody was even 100% supportive of me doing that.
Really?
So I had just lost my mother, and we had about 20 head of thoroughbreds that were in California with different trainers, and she succumbed to breast cancer when she was 52 back in the 80s. And my dad just said, get rid of all of them. Just get rid of all of them. And I said, well, I can't get rid of him. I love him, and I can't get rid of that one. And so that's kind of how I got back into it. So it was definitely not something that was supported at the time. I was kind of raised a little differently. My parents wanted me on the front side, and I wanted to be on the back side. So I kind of bucked the system there. I wasn't supposed to be doing this, but I absolutely love it. It's like what they say, if somebody says don't do it, you're going to do it.
Yeah,
and
I
don't regret it at all.
Yeah, I think that's what a lot of women in this industry have done. They have bucked the system because there's more times than not we might have been told no, but we don't want to accept that as no because we have just as much right to kind of make our voice heard as well. So, I mean, it's very cool that next week for Hall of Fame week, there are 2 women in the Hall of Fame that will be here, jockey Julie Crone and steeplechase trainer Janet Elliott. And sometimes do you feel like we might not be given as much voice as we deserve? I mean, what do you tell your daughters?
All of my children. My son's a mechanical engineer. Like you said, I've got the daughter going to, she actually graduates from SMU in May and takes the bar in Texas. The baby did her degrees in sports broadcasting and strategic communication, and she wants to come back to the racetrack. And I said, if that's what you want to do, come on, because if that's where your heart is, you got to follow your heart, because I don't care how much money you make or what you're doing. If you're not happy, you're not you're not living. I mean, there's a lot more to be said than what are you going to do? Buy a faster car? Buy more jewelry? I mean, what are you going to do? I mean, you got to be doing what makes you happy.
Carmen, what's your favorite part about your job?
Working with the horsemen. They're family. They truly are. And they were my family at a very tough time in my life, too. They were very supportive. So we are family.
Yeah, even though we do compete against each other, it is that community feeling. And it is those times when something tragic does happen, we all do come together and take care of each other, which is so important. You don't find that in a lot of other industries.
No, you don't. You don't at all. And it's wonderful.
It is. What, Janelle, where do you see your barn in 10 years? Where would you like to see your barn in 10 years?
Right here at Oaklawn Park.
Good answer. Good answer. Management approves that answer. We love having both of these fabulous women. As you can see, training has resumed. There's my brother, Rocco Bowen. You develop those relationships with people, and the people that you work with, they do become your extended family because you spend more time with them than you do your biological family. So very happy to call these 2 members of my family and these 2 amazing ladies as well. So women in racing are critical to our sport and exceptionally good role models. So thank you both for being who you are.
Thank you, Nancy.
It's always a pleasure to be
Give
here.
them a
Thank you,
hand,
Nancy.
everybody.